As the blockade on Gaza continues, millions of Palestinians are enduring unimaginable hardships. Israel's ongoing siege of Gaza, especially during Ramadan, represents a severe violation of international law and human rights. With the arrival of Ramadan, the situation in Gaza has become even more dire. Compounding the crisis, Israel has decided to completely cut off electricity to the enclave. Will international pressure prompt Israel to lift the blockade and respect a ceasefire? How long can the people of Gaza survive without aid? And what role do humanitarian organizations play in alleviating this crisis? Welcome to In Depth. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen, with severe water shortages reaching critical levels. According to the UNICEF, only 1 in 10 Palestinians currently has access to safe drinking water. The Palestinian Chronicle has reported that UNICEF has warned 90% of Gaza's population lacks access to safe drinking water. In addition, UNRWA has also raised alarms, stating that the current situation is similar to the one that prevailed in October 2023. UNRWA chief Philippe Lazzarini has warned that the Israelis' decision to block the entry of humanitarian aid and commercial supplies into Gaza threatens the lives and survival of civilians in Gaza, who have experienced only a brief respite from 6 months of brutal war. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza intensifies as Israel continues to blockade aid and cut electricity, worsening the suffering of over 2 million Palestinians. Amidst Ramadan, many residents face extreme shortages, relying on limited resources while hoping for international intervention.
The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached alarming levels as Israel continues to block the entry of essential aid, leaving over 2 million Palestinians in desperate need. During Ramadan, the suffering is intensifying. The Israeli war has severely damaged Gaza's infrastructure, including homes, schools, hospitals, and essential services. As food and water supplies decrease, prices for basic necessities have skyrocketed. The closure of Gaza's crossings has further compounded the situation. Official humanitarian aid that many families rely on for survival. The lack of medical supplies and equipment is also putting countless lives at risk, particularly for vulnerable populations such as children, the elderly, and the sick. Adding to the power shortages caused by a lack of fuel, Israel has decided to cut electricity supply to Gaza. This has forced many essential services, such as bakeries, to shut down. This has made it even more difficult for families to access basic food items, particularly during Ramadan when demand for food increases. The economic collapse is leaving many unable to afford even the most basic goods, exacerbating the food insecurity and international community must urgently intervene to ensure that life-saving assistance reaches Gaza's residents before the situation becomes even more dire. Without immediate action, the future of Gaza's population remains uncertain.
For more analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and from Occupied Jerusalem, Abdel Nasser Mekki, Political Science Professor. A very warm welcome. And we start off with Dr. Mekki. Dr. Mekki, as Gaza's population faces skyrocketing food and fuel prices, And I reassert skyrocketing food and fuel prices and critical shortages of medical supplies of being taken by humanitarian organizations in light of what's taking place, sir, to address these shortages, and what challenges are you encountering due to the Israeli blockade?
I think after the Israeli closing the crossing borders for 10 days or more, there is crossing borders, and they allow to entering, that's the foods and fuels. But I think this was something have been changed now. As you know, now the problem is that the Israeli is trying to push on Hamas in order that they will release all the hostages or the detainees, as you know, the first stage. The problem here was this was created a problem in the food and all the equipment, medicals, and even for the water, because this also they follow this step by cutting the electricity, and the electricity the consequences of this step is that its influence on the water supply for the people, because as you know, the water, the electricity in Gaza is using for the water desalination station in Gaza, which feed about 18,000 meter every day. As you know, the number of the population in Gaza is about 2,300,000 people. And these people are depending on the assistance, international assistance, by coming by outside. So the Israeli, by this step, is
Outside,
created
sir.
that.
Who do you refer to with outside? Which, where?
Yes, I think the outside, the crossing border, like from Karam Shalom borders, and also from the air. Outside mean the international community, the
You meant the
organizations,
international community. Okay, got you, sir.
international community, yes. And they supplying Gaza by, that's providing all these necessary, that's aids, especially the food, especially also the water. But now the people of Gaza now is suffering from the lack of water, the lack of food, especially we are in Ramadan month, and also and is the Israeli try, even there is negotiation in Doha, in Qatar, but the Israeli try to reach or to make black against resistant in Gaza, in order that they
Hey,
will,
Dr.
that's
Mickey,
give
I'm
up.
very sorry here to interrupt you, but at the same time, there's a question that I want to know the answer from you. Is it possible for Israel to pressure Hamas in light of the ongoing ceasefire, which is already going through phases and and there are negotiations going on in Qatar now in Doha, and all of this taking place? And is it possible for Israel to take all the actions it's taking against the Palestinians, which is named genocide and atrocities, sir, at this point and under pressure in this holy month of Ramadan, and the international community, entire world is watching what's happening with the Palestinians? Is this normal, sir?
I think the Israeli, as you know, they treated even to uh, try to or even to return back to the war. So now they are that's even killing the people. Three brothers have been killed yesterday in Gaza, and also about 37 have been injured. They are bombing Gaza. So thing is by even they are using the tool of cutting the water, the electricity, or food, and the crossing borders. Israeli also try to push in Hamas in order to give up, or they will give on some, that's demands or to release the hostages. But I think Hamas will not
Okay,
go
sir,
ahead
I'll
with
leave
this.
you there and I'll be back again. Dr. Osman, a very warm welcome and good morning, sir. Sir, given the current humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where over 90% of the population cannot access water, how do you see the long-term political implications if Israel continues to block vital supplies and restrict aid entry despite the ongoing ceasefire, sir?
Good morning, Rana. Thank you for having me, and greetings to you and Dr. Abdel Nasser and to your dear viewers. Indeed, what we are seeing now in Gaza is a protracted, very deep humanitarian crisis. It is basically the essence of what a humanitarian crisis can be, and a man-made humanitarian crisis, nonetheless, because this is the working of the Israeli occupation entity. They are the ones who are imposing dire humanitarian conditions by completely isolating the Gaza Strip from the wider world and depriving 2 million people who have to endure 15 months of genocide warfare of their basic necessities, depriving them of food, of water, of medicine, of humanitarian supplies, of basically the means of basic sustenance. In addition to that, they also cut the electricity to the Gaza Strip, which even makes the humanitarian crisis more compounded. Of course, these moves by the Israelis are politically motivated, meaning that they intend to use the humanitarian card as a means of pressure on Hamas and on the Palestinian
Here
people.
comes my question again, Dr. Osman. Is this okay? Is this a normal? People dying, their genocide, their atrocities, children, sir, that are malnutrition, their freezing situation, and people in the streets. Is this okay with the international community and with everything that's taking place? People being killed now. Ceasefire. No one is giving negotiations in Qatar are not going on. They're going on, and despite all of this, sir, Israel is defying the entire world.
Of course, it's not okay. It's a war crime. What the Israelis are doing, it's a war crime, and it's a crime against humanity. It's a violation of the United States provides Israel with the political coverage, political cover, and the immunity and impunity that it provides it in the United Nations, international courts, in order to ensure that Israel will never be held accountable. Of course, at the end of the day, Israel will get away with whatever it does. And it seems that this weaponization of aid by the Israelis aims to for Israel to find ways not to abide or honor their part of the ceasefire and data exchange agreement. We have an agreement in place that is composed of 3 phases. Phase 1, in order to secure the release of the remaining detainees in Gaza, about 59 of them, 24 alive, the rest are dead. They want to secure at least the living ones, or at least as much alive detainees as they can before they can resume their genocidal endeavors. Egypt has proposed, and the Arab world, now it's an Arab plan, has proposed a reconstruction plan for Gaza, which has been adopted and endorsed by the Arab League, and is now being even supported by the European Union and China and many other countries around the world, and of course the majority of African countries. Yet, even though the international community supports this plan, The United States is giving mixed signals. Sometimes they say they reject it, like what the White House said, and then when Steve Witkoff comes out and says, "Oh, it's a good idea that is worthy of discussion," and of course Israel has flatly rejected it. And the only way to change or veer off the conversation of the idea of reconstruction and permanent peace is through pushing us to discussing the humanitarian issue by imposing a humanitarian crisis, by
Dr. Osman,
reimposing.
I'll be back to you again. Dr. Mickey, in light of reports warning of impending famine and rising child malnutrition, what specific interventions are needed for international aid organizations to prevent further escalation of this crisis?
I think the international community and the organization should much more interfere in this. As you know, this problem even in Gaza, especially on the that's the hospital sectors, and will influence also child medicine is entering Gaza. So the international community and the organization, they should be also much more interfere and should also push and pressure on Israel also to stop all this genocide. Because as you know, if Israel is going ahead with this, there will be many people will die by that by starvation and also by the lack of the food and the medicine. So even that also the Arab countries after the Arab they also should also discuss this matter and pressure on the United States of America that they should solve the problem
Do you see,
of
sir,
the
that discussions are bringing any results? Do you see anything that's getting better?
Until now, I don't think that there is anything happened because you know that the American is just busy or they are focusing on the hostages, how they could release the detainees, and in the same time they are not interested on the life of the people or the humanitarian that situation in Gaza. They are just focusing on detainees by the Israeli detainees, and that this is the story for them. But I think also they should be also not discussion. Also, they should be also pressure on the United States of America.
Sir, all
That's
this
me.
impunity that's taking place is to pressure Hamas to release the detainees and to pressure Hamas to do what they want them to do. But on the other side, we have a big crisis taking place, sir, which is people that are dying now on the ground.
We could focusing, that's on the implementation of the first stage, which is, that as that we know that they now for the first stage to go to the second stage. That means also comply Israeli government to go ahead with the second stage. Otherwise, I think the Israeli will continue making all these crimes against the Palestinians in Gaza. And I don't think that the intervention...
Dr. Mickey, it's obvious that they're not able to make Israel to move on with the second stage of the ceasefire. I'll go back to Dr. Osman. Dr. Osman, despite the ceasefire agreement, Israel's recent decision to close the border crossings and halt humanitarian aid seems to be an international escalation. How do you read this, sir, and actions from a political perspective? And what does it mean for the stability of the ceasefire, sir?
Of course, it puts the fate of the ceasefire into question, and basically the Israelis are inching very slowly back towards escalation in the Gaza Strip. Not only have they now deprived the people of basic necessities by reimposing the blockade or the embargo on Gaza, but also they target Palestinians almost on a daily basis, killing Palestinians on a daily basis in clear violation of the ceasefire, just
sir,
like what they
cutting
did.
off electricity, sir.
Yes, of course, all the humanitarian, all the means of sustenance, they are cutting it, unfortunately, and cutting the entire war strip as one further step of escalation. And I think that they will keep escalating until they are able to resume the war. And they are trying to ruin the direct negotiations the United States is holding with Hamas. with regards to the detainee exchange. Of course, this is something that has reportedly enraged the Israeli government, and they see that that this move by the United States does not undercuts or undermines Israel's designs in Gaza. However, they have the capability to find this, on the other hand, the Israelis, to undermine all the U.S. endeavors, and of course undermine the Qatari and Egyptian initiatives to end this war at the end of the day. And I think this is what they this ceasefire to go on. They
It's
just
very
want to
obvious,
use
sir. Also, the Israeli aggression and the not stopped, where just yesterday Israel bombed and killed people in Gaza. What does the lack of respect for the ceasefire mean for the negotiations, Dr. Osman?
It will only serve to the detriment of the negotiations. It will only threaten the negotiations and make it even harder. The Israelis think that they can gain leverage by violating the ceasefire, while actually all it does is jeopardize any future chances of a sustainable and a permanent cessation of hostilities in the Gaza Strip. And I think why the Israelis are doing that is simply because they are not interested. They're not remotely even interested in ending the war in Gaza. They have not aggression. They have not yielded any results that they can mark as a victory. Netanyahu has failed to defeat Hamas, even though he destroyed its capabilities and the Gaza Strip, committed an act of genocide. Yet Hamas still exists. Palestinian resistance still exists despite all of this bloodletting that the Israelis have indulged in. So now he wants to go back to war in order to deal some sort of decisive blow to Hamas. At least he imagines that he can do that. Resumes, God forbid, he will resume the war at a much more pace and entire Gaza Strip and conduct a counterinsurgency operation. If this happens, it will mean that tens of thousands of Palestinians, tens of thousands more of Palestinians will die, and it could actually threaten with the idea of the displacement of Palestinians outside the Gaza Strip, which could lead to a regional crisis.
Dr. Osman, wrap up today's episode by your very important words, which you said that Israel does not want to end this war in Gaza, and the question will remain, will the international pressure prompt Israel to lift the blockade and respect the ceasefire? And how long can the people of Gaza survive without aid? And what role do humanitarian organizations play in alleviating this crisis? That was Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and Abdel Nasser Mekki, Political Science Professor. Thank you very much for your valuable, informative knowledge and your insights. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you very much for watching and joining us, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.